meeting is being recorded.
Good afternoon. Welcome. It's 5:30 p.m. and I'm calling the March 7, 2023 meeting of the Historic Site Preservation Board to order. May we please have the roll call?
Yes, Madam Chair. Chair Huff.
Present.
Vice Chair Nelson.
Present.
Member Miller.
Here.
Member Hanson.
Here.
And Member Rosenau.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. May we please have the staff report on the posting of the agenda?
Yes, the agenda for this meeting was posted for public review of the City Hall at the City Hall Bulletin Board on the west side of City Council chambers and the Planning Department counter in accordance with the city policies.
Very good. Does the board have any revisions to the agenda? Okay, may I please have a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion by Rosenau and a second by Miller. Are there any discussions on the agenda? Motion? Okay, seeing none, I call for the question. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 And opposed, none. Okay, so we have 5-0. Passes, motion passes. Okay, so next, this time has been set aside for members of the public to address the Historic Site Preservation Board on agenda items and items of general interest within the jurisdiction, subject matter jurisdiction of the board. Although the Historic Site Preservation Board values your comments pursuant to the Brown Act, it generally cannot take any action on items not listed on the posted agenda. So there'll be 3 minutes assigned for each speaker. There's no public hearing today. So if anyone wants to speak on an agenda item, they should do so now. And we'll ask Architectural Resources Group to speak after the staff speaks about the theater. So is there anyone that's requested to speak on agenda item or item that's not on today's agenda? Anybody request to speak? Okay, so seeing that no one wants to speak at this time, we will present to the consent agenda. This is approval of the minutes of February 7th, 2023. Are there any revisions to the minutes of the meeting of February 7th? Any revisions? Oh, yes. Okay, Member Nelson.
Yes, just for the record, I didn't receive a copy of the minutes.
Okay. All right. So may I, yes, Member Rosenau.
Nor did I. I think I saw them on the online version, but I don't have a hard copy. Sorry.
Okay.
I as well did not get them.
But they're posted online. I just went online and got them.
And you received them in the post mail? Did you receive them in your mailbox?
No, they weren't submitted as part of our packets, but if you went to the email giving us the link to the meeting, all of the items on the agenda are linked. So I just went online and printed my exactly.
Okay.
I do see, Madam Chair, that they were omitted from the print copies of the packages, so I do apologize for that error. So the board may elect to continue this, and we can bring it back at the future meeting if that's what you so wish to do.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of February 7th? Or
I would move to approve. I read them and I didn't have any edits, and I read them pretty carefully.
Okay, and I'll second that motion. So I have a motion by Member Hanson and a second by Chair Huff. Is there any other discussion about the motion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor of the minutes, please say aye. Aye.
Hi.
Okay, any opposed to the motion?
I'm going to abstain since I have not received them.
Okay, one abstention.
Likewise.
Two abstain. Okay, so 3 in favor and 2 abstentions. So the motion passes. Okay, so we will move on. So there are no public hearings today, nor unfinished business. So let us proceed to agenda item 4A, new business. And this is an application by the City of Palm Springs requesting a certificate of appropriateness for alterations to the Plaza Theater, a Class 1 landmark historic site located 128 South Palm Canyon Drive, Palm Springs. May we please have a staff report to begin with?
Yes, give me just a moment as I pull up the presentation.
Okay. Very good.
All right. Is that still visible?
Yes. Visible.
Okay. Is it visible in full screen, hopefully?
Mhm.
Great.
Yes.
All right. So for the record, Sarah Yoon, Historic Preservation Officer and Associate Planner for the City of Palm Springs. The application that's before the board today is for alterations and rehabilitation of the Plaza Theater building, which is a city-owned Class 1 landmark site. The proposed scope of work requires a certificate of appropriateness, as this is a major alteration and updates to a Class 1 site. The resource is located in the larger mixed-use complex, better known as La Plaza, and it's zoned for civic use. As you can see in this image here, the entrance to the theater is oriented towards South Palm Canyon. You can see my cursor here, but the plaza itself is embedded right in the middle of this block. The theater was designed by architect Harry Williams for Julia Carnell and was constructed in 1936. Cast in place concrete, heavy timber construction was used for this theater, and it's considered to be an atmospheric theater. Here on the slides, we see some historic photographs. One I didn't have the dates for, but I thought it was fun to include because it has such clear resolution. And then the one on the left is dated approximately 1951. As you can see here, the property, these are photographs of the front facade of the theater. And as you can, as was mentioned earlier, the property was granted Class 1 landmark status by the City Council in 1991. This was in your staff report, but just to briefly go over the timeline of past actions between the years of 1988 through 1991, the theater went through an adaptive reuse of projects to accommodate for live performances as well as film screenings. The Follies operated out of this space and they were there at the theater until 2014. In 1998, the CRA acquired the theater. And once the Follies moved out in 2014, a conditions assessment was prepared by Interactive Design Corporations to understand the existing conditions of the theater. And shortly thereafter, the City of Palm Springs acquired the Plaza Theater from the CRA in 2016, and there was a feasibility study and a concept design that was completed around that time. And then in 2021, the Plaza Theater Foundation was formed and created, and the foundation has been undertaking this rehabilitation work on behalf of the city. And the application for service updates and rehabilitation of the theater that is before the board today was done by Architectural Resources Group. So that's just kind of a very quick overview of the past actions associated with the Plaza Theater. This is a bit of a text-heavy slide, but I did want to just point out some of the highlights for the alterations and changes that were proposed. This This list is also in the staff report. The scope of work deals with both interior and exterior work. Much of the interior work is related to upgrades and improvements to equipment, systems, and compliance for accessibility requirements, et cetera. It's really the upgrades to make sure that this space can perform as a performing arts space that meets current codes and current needs. Again, it's outlined in the staff report, and it's detailed in the submitted drawing set that was presented by ARG. The changes proposed on the exterior of the resource are largely related to fenestration and repainting. ARG has conducted a forensic study on the existing historic finishes that support their choices, that support the choices for surface treatment and paint color. That was also detailed in the drawing sheets that were submitted as part of the application, and they went as far as showing you the paint chips that they took and took the samples from. So that was in your packet. And these are images and snips of the actual packet that show the exterior changes in a little bit more detail in order to increase the capacity of the lobby space. It's proposed in the application, a steel frame glass doors would be placed in these openings on the front facade. The middle image where my cursor is here shows the existing kind of outdoor lobby space that is proposed to be enclosed. So this would all become interior space. Again, this drawing at the bottom left-hand corner shows that rendering of the three openings being enclosed. The material that's been proposed is a steel, it's a painted steel material, they're glass doors. And the proposed fenestration has a very quiet profile. The way that the fenestration is proposed is seen to be it's understated in comparison to the historic resource, and they do not visually or materially impair the historic features on the front facade. In addition, there's no mass bulk or scale kind of added in with the result of this change. So they're able to increase space without adding any sort of bulk to the historic resource, which is commendable. And the reintroduction of fenestration on the south facade. The south facade here is not street facing. There are existing openings that have been boarded up, and so those will be opened up and fenestration will be introduced into those openings. And then updates on related to equipment will be placed on the exterior. They will be screened and placed in locations that are distanced away from the primary front facade. When we evaluate these class 1 alterations, we do have 4 criterions that we look at. In this instance, criterion number 4 is actually one that asks if federal funds are being used, and if they are, there are some requirements related to how those changes need to be made. In this case, there are no federal funds being utilized. However, the treatments are all in compliance with the U.S. Secretary of Interior Standards. Criterion 1, 2, and 3 largely are talking about compatibility, preservation, and mitigation of any detrimental impacts to the historic resource. The proposed scope of work is found to meet the first 3 criterion listed. And for criterion 3, the proposed changes are found to be consistent with the massing, materials, finishes of the historic resource, even though they can be distinguished from the historic resource. And so staff does find that the necessary criterion are met for the alteration. In conclusion, after reviewing the detailed scope of work, staff finds that the upgrades and alterations do not materially impair or negatively impact the historic resource of the theater. The improvements are done in a thoughtful manner that will improve the operations of the theater, and they'll bring them to the current code and standards of today. All changes are harmonious in design and meet the necessary criteria. Therefore, staff does recommend that HSPB approve the certificate of appropriateness to alter and rehabilitate the Plaza Theater as proposed. With that, I'm happy to take any questions related to the staff report. And
Mhm.
and of course, we have ARG present at this meeting to give a brief presentation on the project as well.
Mhm. So thank you for that very detailed staff report and timeline of history. Very, very helpful. Does the board have any questions of the staff? Any questions? Okay, let us proceed and invite is Jason from Architectural Resources Group to make some comments.
Great, thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Jason Curry, architect with Architectural Resources Group. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And Sarah just gave us a really great overview of the project. So I can go into a few other areas in a little bit more detail and also answer any of the questions that you might have. Really, there's two main aspects to this project, one being the historic restoration component and the other being bringing as much kind of new theatrical capabilities into this building as we can within the limited footprint. And it's really about doing those two things in a real seamless way. So we've been very careful of researching and determining what our original components and thoughtful about how we integrate new elements into those. Starting with the exterior of the building, we've done a lot of research through photos as well as doing some forensic analysis. This is a little diagram showing where we've taken samples and put the samples under the microscope to get back to the original color scheme. We're finding a really classic muted palette, a little bit more simple than what's there right now with kind of painted outlines around the openings and such. So we're proposing to go back to the original color scheme, which is represented here. We've taken a similar approach on the interior of the building. I know that's not the exact purview of this board, but just to let you know that we have done that and similar proposed a color scheme inspired by what we've found through those samples. There's a lot of really beautiful stenciled painting in the lobby and the exterior lobby. We've done some extensive tests about how to clean that. We found that we can, most of it is in good shape and cleanable. We've determined a couple methods for the different methods for the interior versus the kind of the exterior covered area where there's different paints. And we'll be able to restore it mostly with cleaning, just a little bit of in painting. We found in these spaces that also that the original palette is a little bit more simple. The stenciling that you can see there now is original. The wall colors are not. They're in this more similar palette to the exterior of the building. There's also decorative painting at the proscenium. We've gone through the same process of defining a cleaning procedure for that. So as I mentioned, we've done a really close look at trying to determine what out of the building was original components. We've done that through the samples as well as we have a set of the original drawings. We've been able to compare original drawings to what's there now. And in this instance, in the atmospheric sidewalls, really kind of dial in on all of the details that have been either taken away from the original or added. And then we've come up with something that represents much more closely the original. But staying on the exterior, as was mentioned, at the east end of the building, which is the least visible from any point around the building, that's where we're putting all of the mechanical units, similar to how they are now on the roofs above the stage. And also we'll be screening those. On this south elevation, we're proposing to restore these openings. The original plans didn't show glazed openings here, but rather just kind of open to the corridor. We are using that for access in the theater, so we're proposing to take the boards off and to provide new doors and windows in this very kind of simple open design, which preserves the arch shape in both the door and the window. There's just another detailed drawing showing some refinements like true divided lights, these large panes with slim moldings, and just a kind of a very simplified design. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to go into any other area in more detail.
Thank you, Mr. Curry. Really wonderful presentation, all the details. Does any board member have any questions of Mr. Curry? Any comments? Member Nelson?
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Curry. I just have a small little question. I was at the site earlier today with the drawing.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to do some on-site investigation, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I just have about 4 or 5 questions. The first one pertains to the drawing labeled G2.01. And it's related to the top middle photo that said with street elevation. Are you seeing that?
Yeah, should I share my screen so everyone can see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that top middle photo there. You can see on the left side, if you move your cursor over to the left, there's a trellis, kind of a wooden trellis, kind of a wooden lattice screen that actually touches the front facade of the building. And because it's touching the historic resource, my question is, does that stay? Does it get removed? What happened to that? Also, while we're looking at that photo and related to that, that far left arch currently has a railing. You can see that wrought iron railing there that goes almost all the way to it. It stops about, I think, 4 feet, maybe 3 or 4 feet shy. But there is a dining table from that restaurant that butts right up to that arch. So because you're proposing glass doors that open outward, I would imagine that the restaurant will not be allowed to any longer have a table back there, and that railing may in fact have to be shortened for proper egress and ADA requirements. So those are my questions regarding that particular photo, and then after that I have a few more.
Sure. Thanks for those questions. I'm going to switch just quickly now to the site plan. This is a site plan looking at the entire block, and one thing that it's illustrating is how all of the neighboring properties are around the building. And the property line for the theater is actually the exterior walls of the theater. So the blue hatch here indicates easements that are granted to the theater for ingress and egress. And we have determined that this area is also part of the easements. But they are not on the theater property. So right now, there's no scope of work proposed in those areas. So that would include the fence or the trellis that's on the roof of this adjacent building. We are in the process, so the city has recently procured a site survey so that we can really document all of the items that are in this front easement, and then we'll be able, with that, we'll be able to determine what we need to do to make these doors compliant with the exiting.
Great, thank you. And while we're talking about those front doors, the far right door, of the new proposed glass doors in those archways. If you want to go back to that photo that you had up,
The photo, sure.
it would drawing G201. Yeah, so the far right arch, on the bottom right, there's a staircase. And the bottom of that staircase, the first step protrudes out, which would prevent the right side door from opening outward. And I thought I saw on the rendering that that far right door, because each of those arches will have two doors that open to create the full arch. And so on that far right arch, the right half is not able to open outward because of that bottom stair. So will it open inward or will it be fixed?
So just gonna switch forward to the plan here. So what we're proposing is that that will be built like a door, but be fixed in place. So it'll resemble all of these other ones, but be fixed.
And is that acceptable egress for this building or for the ADA Act, that kind of thing?
We do have all of our exiting width provided in these doors, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you for that clarification. All right, so my next question is, regarding those glass doors that will be in the front arches of the outer lobby, will they be a special low glare or non-glare glass, since that facade gets the full afternoon sun and that western exposure?
Yeah, another really good question. So we are proposing a very clear glass, but also an insulated glass, trying to balance the heat gain exposure, but also really preserving the view into the lobby. So we've found a window manufacturer that does true divided lights and with a 1/2-inch insulated glazing. I think we are going to propose probably also maybe a light coating for another low E effect, but preserving as much of the clarity into the space as we can.
Okay, great. And while we're talking about those doors, I saw that the frames are steel, which Sarah pointed out, and they're painted. Are they powder coated by the manufacturer?
Yeah, it is a manufacturer's factory finish. They have a slightly different approach than the powder coating, but it is done by the manufacturer. Yeah.
Okay, great. And I would imagine that's going to be very heat resistant, sun resistant, you know, all of that good stuff.
Yeah, it's a 5-stage process. This particular manufacturer that we're listing as the basis of design has a very well-designed system.
All right, so my last question that I had here is a three-parter. So it pertains to drawing A2.02, which is quite a bit further along. Yeah, so that's the south elevation.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe you and Sarah had already drawn that those 4 arched windows are in fact going to be restored. And so you'll be able to see through them.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, and then that door in the center, the fifth arch, the door will actually be restored. Is that a like just a normal exit or an emergency exit, or?
Right. So it wouldn't be an entry door. It is an exit door that's required for the building. And the design of these is proposed to be similar to what's at the front.
Okay, great. That clarifies a lot for me. I appreciate that. And then the three vertical things that extend beyond the roof line that look like chimneys. I've seen them all these years and never known what they are. Are they in fact chimneys, or are they just decorative?
There's no fireplace that they're connected to. There may be some venting in some of them, but primarily decorative at this point.
Great, yeah, venting makes sense because they appear to have some kind of an opening at the top with the screening on them. So I appreciate that clarification, very helpful. My last questions are really about the interior, even though we don't have purview on the interior. It's just for personal satisfaction, and I just
Sure. Yeah.
what color the drapery fabric and the upholstery on the seat is proposed to be.
In our rendering, the drapery is still kind of a placeholder. I don't think that we've made a final decision on that yet. There's a number of different precedents that we've found that we could go in that direction. And similar with the seats, we don't have a color selected there yet.
Okay, I feel like in a historic color photo I saw, I'm not sure if it was accurate or back to, you know, the mid-30s when the theater opened, but I thought I saw on the seat what seemed to appear like a gold or harvest gold type of upholstery. But anyway, thank you for answering all those questions. Much appreciated.
My pleasure.
Very good. Any other questions or comments? Okay, yes, Member Hanson?
Yeah, I just wanted to congratulate ARG and their team for all this great work. And I believe it's a pretty short time frame to have done, that amount of research and design work as well. And I'm just also curious, moving forward, what is the time frame for completion?
Well, thank you for that. We have been really pushing to keep the schedule moving while we're really doing very detailed work. Right now, our schedule has us going into the building department after this review sometime this month. We're expecting that it'll be in building department review for and including back check, a month and a half to 2 months, and being ready to go out to bid then at that time.
Okay, and I'm assuming also that some of the interior features that board member Nelson just referenced, the seat colors and draperies, that would all be finalized at a staff level. Is that true, Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly can review that with the ARG team to make sure that they're historically appropriate. I did want to make a quick clarification. For typical projects that come before the board, you're correct in that we don't have interior purview. For public, for a project such as this where we have public interiors, HSPB does have purview over the public interior space, but not the back of house. So there are elements of it that we could weigh in on.
And on the areas that have been proposed, for the glazing to make more space, is it also going to be gathering space in there? Just, I think it was referenced, to sort of supplement the minimal space in the actual lobby itself.
Exactly. Yeah. The doors that are the exterior doors right now are in this position. We're proposing to save those and reuse them as part of the sound and light lock that separates the lobby from the auditorium. But by taking those off and enclosing this area, it's really going to connect both of these spaces with conditioned air and really make them both feel like the gathering spaces of the lobby. What it also does is the balcony stair currently comes down, and the only connection to the upper balcony is through these stairways that are at this outer lobby. So it'll put one entrance and then have everything else accessible from inside that.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Mr. Curry, for your detailed report. And boy, it's amazing all the details that you all have done. It's just kind of mind-boggling, all the work. Wow. So it looks great. So thank you very much.
I did have one more comment.
Yes. Okay. I'm sorry. I see your hand. Yes, Member Nelson.
Great, thank you. Sorry about that. Since staff had kind of verified the whole thing about interior purview with the public space, I did have two other things that I had noted, but held off on asking them because they were related to the interior. So I'm going to go ahead and ask those now. And they both have to do with accessibility and perhaps meeting ADA requirements. The first one is related to the possibility of a permanent captioning feature, because I know you'll be having, public film, stage play, symposiums, all that kind of stuff. If there's any place anywhere in the theater inside where people who require captioning because of hearing loss or deafness, if that will become a permanent feature, or if it is something that will be part of the audio visual and will be brought out on an as-needed basis. So that was the first item. The second was in some old historic photos, there was a photo I saw, I can't remember where now, but it was somewhere in the handout that we got. It showed a wooden staircase that goes up to the stage. So I know that the Follies have put in those big stairs or steps on each side of the stage, which were not original. But in the event, which I would think would be a big possibility, in the event that you have an event or a ceremony where you want people to be able to get up on stage, is there a plan for a portable stair that would be custom built, that could be mobile, that will be able to be brought out and attached to the front so people could get up and down that way, or is the only access from the back of the house?
Again, great questions. I think as just the first part of the question, an assisted listening system is part of a code requirement that'll be provided. I think that we would have to do a closed captioning on a case-by-case basis with the different types of performances that are possible here, but that is something I'm going to ask our AV consultant just to see if there is any other built-in provision we can provide. On the question of access, the original building plans don't have any access from the auditorium to the stage. And that's what we're proposing based on not being able to really, in the confines of the existing building, get any sort of ramp up wheelchair access between the auditorium and the stage. So we have a accessible performer's entrance that's off of the stage. And we have we're building a new accessible dressing room that's off of the stage. So all of that will be on an accessible level. But we're not proposing any connection between the auditorium and the stage due to those space constraints.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for those clarifications. Much appreciated.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, seeing no further comments or questions, may I have a motion for a certificate of appropriateness, please?
I so move.
Okay, you want to state the motion, please?
I so move to approve the certificate of appropriateness as in the staff report.
Very good. So I have a motion. May I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Okay, so have a motion by Rosenthal with the Rosenthal with a second by member Nelson. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, I will call for the question. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Okay, any opposed? Okay, so the motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Let us proceed to agenda discussion, item 5A, Preservations Matters Symposium. So may I call on member Nelson and member Hanson to report on Preservation Matters Symposium.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe everyone on the board received an email from city staff, Ken Lyon and David Neal, who were able to complete for us on time our registration page, which is now live as promised on March 7th. It includes our very short civil reel, which is about 1 minute and 30 seconds. And that is promoting the content or the presentation that will be given during the event. So we've all been working hard, the subcommittee, myself, Janet, Captain Huff, and our advisor from previous board, Dick Burkett, who is one of the co-founders of this wonderful event. This is our 9th annual event. And as you've heard before, the theme is A Mirage Becomes an Oasis. And we tried to have presentations that center around that theme. And it's a very exciting 2 days with a wonderful lineup of home tours, many of which were secured by Madam Chair Huff. And so I feel that we're very lucky this year to have all of these wonderful homes and these wonderful presenters. So you'll see when you go to the registration page link, there's day 1, which you have to register for. And then you have to register for the home tours as well for the end of day 1. And then you must also register separately for day 2. And it's very simple. It's all on Eventbrite. And staff has spelled it out more simply than ever this year. So we really appreciate them taking the time to cater to every whim and question and make it something that I think we can all be proud of. So if you haven't looked at that link yet, please do so. And for anyone who's watching or the general public who's interested, you can go to the city's website and eventually within a coming week, hopefully, there'll be something on the home page where it says spotlight and you'll be able to click there. Alternately, you can go to planning, the planning section of the city's website, find the historic site board area and click on Preservation Month. Or you can just go into Google and in the search bar, type in City of Palm Springs Preservation Month. So one of those ways will get you to the link. And of course, many of us will be sharing it on social media. So it'll be on some Facebook pages. So hopefully the community will also see it and find it that way. And we have an email list, a database, which we're contacting. And this week we are reaching out to all of the participating organizations to get the marketing rolling for the event. So all is on schedule.
Super. Well, thank you, Member Nelson and Member Hanson, for all of your good work. And and your committee. We know how much work it is. So we look forward to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So now we're going to move on to comments from the board. Are there any comments from the board today? Member Rosenau?
I've got a quick question. I don't know if it's quick, but hopefully quick. A question for staff. What can we expect nomination wise in the coming few months coming up before the board? I know that PSPF has a few in the hamper already, and I know a few other ones. So just curious as to what we'll be seeing in the next couple of months.
Yeah, so we're working through kind of the log of nomination reports that we have. I believe we have about 6 in the queue, and we're kind of just going through them systematically and in the order that we've received them. Unfortunately, there's a bit of a learning curve for me, and I'm just trying to figure out which processes, which projects will need to go first. But we do have 6 in the queue, and we're trying to get them one by one to you as quickly as we can. I don't have an order presented to you now, but we'll be busy for the next couple months for sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. So other comments from the board? Okay. Member Nelson?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. This is the board member comment section, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, great. Just making sure. Firstly, I wanted to thank both Mr. Curry and Katie from AIG for your wonderful work on this and for your great presentation today, and also for staff member Yoon for her presentation as well. And while we're discussing staff, I do have 3 quick questions, actually 2. I had asked about both in an email and in public comment at the last meeting about 275 Tamarisk. I was wondering if staff could just give a brief update on that, as well as on the current status of Bank of America, because some plywood boards have gone up in front, and it looks like they're going backwards. So I'm just wanting to see if we can get a report or an update on either one of those buildings.
Sure. Did you want me to go ahead and answer those questions at this time? Okay.
Please,
great.
please.
So for 275 Tamarisk, we're in the process of communicating with the applicant team. They are working on submitting an application for minor amendment to that property. So that application will be coming and will be in front of the board, the HSPB board. So once we have that finalized application and it's processed, it will be coming to you for review. It is a class 3 site, not historically designated, but since it was recognized on our inventory of class 3 sites, and the proposed scope is of a larger scale, we will bring that to the board for review. So that will be coming in the month or so. And in terms of the Bank of America building, I believe that we've had a few updates that staff member Lyon had given the board. They are in the process of replacing their curtain walls. There are lots of issues related to the curtain wall system now. And so I believe we did give the board a brief saying that we would be seeing those coming in. It's needed to support the system as they do the replacement. If member Lyon wanted to expand on the conversations related to that, he's available.
You've captured it correctly. The only other additional part that they've had problems with is there are some structural issues with the wooden joists that comprise the roof structure. So they're having to go in and do a fairly extensive amount of structural repair and replacement of the wood roof framing.
Great, thank you both.
Mm-hmm. Any other board member comments? Okay, let's proceed now to staff comments. The CLG annual report.
Perfect. So as you're all likely aware, as a certified local government, we're required to submit an annual report regarding our activities to the state. The CLG report was added to the agenda as a received and file item. And so it was just to inform you that that was going forward and being placed. The report, the staff's goal is to send out that report to the state in the next few weeks. And so we're trying to finalize the details related to that. I did reach out to the individual board members asking for specific documentation. So thank you for getting back to me on those. And if you still have something to submit to me, let me know. If you need additional forms, I'm happy to provide those. If you can help me submit those by the end of next week, that would be great. So we can get that rolling and get it to the state. And there isn't any details to report other than that time frame of trying to get that in by the end of the month.
Very good.
That.
Yes,
Yes.
Member Hanson.
I just had a couple of comments on the report, which I read, and I've prepared, I think, 19 CLG reports for 2 other cities, but on page 4, section 2A, there's a section on professional discipline, which I noticed it actually has either retired or people's, jobs. And actually that is supposed to reflect, as you do in your staff section, which professional discipline we meet according to the Secretary of the Interior's professional qualification standards.
Okay.
As a certified local government, the city is actually required, to the best of your ability, to have board members that meet the professional qualification standards. And that could be, it's really, if you read them, it's kind of loosely interpreted, but so for example, mine says I'm retired, and they wouldn't have a clue, although they know who I am, but I would meet the standards as a historian and an architectural historian. So, and then each of us should have filled out actually the forms, the professional qualification forms, which typically are submitted with the report. They may have changed the requirements since I've done a report the last time. Anyway, just something I noticed. And then also I noticed that, and again, I haven't done a report probably since 2018-19, but there used to be a section near the end of the report that was on your accomplishments for that reporting year, as well as your proposed plan for the following year. And I noticed that wasn't here. And do you know if, or maybe Ken would, with, having done this more years, I don't know if that's been taken out of the template. There were some things at the end of this template that were different than they had been when I did. It was a lot of work to fill that out. And maybe they decided, not to put that in every year, because I think, a lot of cities and have difficulty meeting the requirements of putting the report together to begin with, let alone having to propose an entire preservation plan for the next year. Anyway, I was just curious if that had been removed out of the template.
In terms of what's in those current forms and templates, we've acknowledged that as we brought this to you this evening, there are a few parts of it that we still need to finish off and provide input on. So I'll work with Sarah on the parts that you've asked about and any others that still apparently need a response, and we'll make sure that it's filled out properly.
Okay.
And Janet, just to clarify on the forms, the forms, we don't edit them, so it's as received, and I think you have to request them directly. And so it sounds like there may have been a change since you've last seen them.
Yeah, and I did go online to see if they used to post the template, but now it says, and I recall that they were starting to do that only by request.
Yeah.
So I couldn't actually see what the current template included or did not include. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for being so conscientious about it. Really helpful. So are there any other staff comments this evening?
Madam Chair, I actually do have one more staff comment. It's not listed on your agenda, but staff would like to provide an update regarding meeting platforms for the board and commissions. So back in February, City Council did lift the emergency ordinance along with the state. However, the City Council, pursuant to Assembly Bill 361, Council did give the individual boards the choice to decide if they would continue virtual meetings based on health and social distancing, or to conduct the meetings in person. We will get some additional clarity from the the city council in the coming weeks. But for now, we did want to ask the board what format that they would like to meet for the April meeting or the April hearing. We wanted to give that opportunity to the board.
And maybe before that discussion, if I could just maybe give it a little more flavor, because it's kind of an evolving discussion. So I think we had assumed when the city and the state emergency orders were lifted at the end of February that that would eliminate our ability to meet remotely, and that the provisions of the Brown Act that had applied pre-pandemic would sort of come back into force, and we would need to be in person, et cetera. We were gearing up to allow remote participation by applicants and the public in sort of a hybrid format, with the understanding that members would need to be present in the room that we used to meet in, the large conference room, as I understand it, before the pandemic. The state legislation, AB 361, that Sarah is mentioning is a little confusing. First of all, it sunsets in January of 2024, so it's only available to local jurisdictions for the rest of this calendar year. And there is a provision in there that the city council is choosing to use, which says, despite any emergency order, so in the absence of an emergency order, where there is a public health need to promote physical distancing, a local jurisdiction can find that is necessary and sort of make those findings every 30 days. And that is what they elected to do at their last meeting, and what they are discussing again at their meeting this Thursday night, which is essentially saying there's still a public health issue going on. We support physical distancing, and each board and commission can choose to use the provisions of AB 361, allowing them to meet remotely. I'm saying all of this because I think, as Sarah said, we're looking for your direction on how you want to handle your April meeting. However, we are awaiting some additional clarity from the city attorney on what all of this means, and sort of we'll probably have further direction for you at the April meeting, if not before. So I just wanted to give a little more flavor to that, to say we're looking for your direction on how to handle April. There is a small chance I will reach back out with further direction from our city attorney, which may change that decision. But for now, we believe the decision is yours.
Okay. So what are some comments from our board about that issue? Who would like to comment? Who's in favor of keeping the Zoom at least, for April? Yes, Member Nelson.
Yeah, I think we discussed this briefly in an earlier meeting, maybe last month or the month before, but I have said that I was in favor of keeping it virtual on Zoom. I would support either way for the April meeting, either live or virtual. The virtual is great because of the captioning, so I really truly don't miss a word. But also, I think we had suggested the possibility of changing to 5 o'clock instead of 5:30, whether it was live or virtual. And that's my only comment. Thank you.
Member Rosenau, did you have a comment?
I just agree. I prefer the virtual, and 5 o'clock is my preferred time as well. Thank you.
I'm good with 5 o'clock virtual. Member Hanson, you're muted.
Yeah, yes, I am very good with virtual 5 o'clock.
And Mr. Miller?
Me as well. 5 o'clock change would be fine with me. And for April, I would prefer Zoom.
Okay, so there you have it. Okay.
Great. And just on the timing issue, we have a new city manager who, of course, started yesterday. And I think, the direction of council last year or within the last couple of years was to move all of the boards and commissions to a consistent 5:30 start time. I think a number of them have flagged the same kinds of points that you all are making. And so that is an ongoing conversation. So I just wanted to make sure you all know we haven't lost that request to start earlier, but we need to sort of sort that out with an overall policy with the new city manager, and then obviously with the blessing of city council. Vice Chair Nelson, I did just want to discuss the captioning. So how we've been doing it, the Architectural Review Committee is back in person in the large conference room. Because we are doing these hybrid meetings, we do sort of participate as one room, as one member of this Zoom call. And so it is projected on the large screens that are in that room, and we have the option to caption those meetings. So when we do ultimately return at whatever date that may be, we'll make sure that we figure that out and have that accommodation as well.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Good, thank you for that comment. Any other discussion today? Okay, seeing no further discussion, this meeting of the Historic Site Preservation Board is adjourned at 6:30 p.m. to the meeting of Tuesday, April 4th, 2023 at 5:30 p.m. Correct? Okay, so this is adjourned. Thank you all for your participation today. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.